Hello, welcome to us Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. I live stream every Monday looking at event results from around the world, Age of Sigmar event results from around the world, and I'm backed up by the stats from the T-Sport Stats Center crew, Rob and Ziggy. You should check those guys out. They're super lovely people. And today we're going to be looking at, I think, it's 6 events? Oh no, I've lost my sheet. 6 countries and 176 players. We're going to look at the stats first, though, and then we're going to look at the events, because there's some really interesting stuff with the stats for Age of Sigmar. We do the best stats for Age of Sigmar in the world, so I'm going to talk about that as well. If you've enjoyed the show, like, comment, subscribe. Let's get on with it. Thanks to all the TOs around the world for running events, and thanks to the Twitch chat. Okay, let's take a look at the stats for Age of Sigmar as we go into this GHB. Okay, we've had 41 events so far since the launch of the General's Handbook. If you do go onto thehonestwargamer.com and look at the stats, you need to thank Ziggy and Rob, who put these stats together and present them so well. They look fantastic, and they have a lot of utility that a lot of people miss. For instance, over here, mirror matches, we include mirror matches in here, but we put them as 0. So the best version to look at is excluding, not the best, another version to look at is excluding mirror matches. That way, you get just how an army performs against everything other than itself, which already starts to kind of skew the math a little bit, which is quite fun. Okay, these numbers differ to MetaWatch, which is done by Games Workshop, and the reason that they differ is because ours are done well. There's a really long methodology I could discuss about it, but it's effectively that. You either trust me or don't trust me. I don't have a dog in the race for you to... I'm not trying to argue for your affection. These are just better and done better. They're done by better people, and they're put together more well. Okay? Okay, so what does this look like? Right? Okay, we've got Big War are at the top, but their meta representation is wildly low. Okay? They've been at 12 tournaments. They've only had 33 matches. Right? So we're not going to really discuss them because it's not really worth it. But that said, they've just this weekend gone 4-1. Last week, they also went 4-1 as well. So I wouldn't count them out. I wouldn't say that this is aberrant, but the 57% win rate, which is over 55%, which is what we consider to be too good, is they are there. But I would say that they probably, with enough players playing them, would drop down a little bit. Right? Okay? Now, Lumineth Realm Lords, we've had a lot of games. 31 tournaments, 206 matches. They are a percentage point over where we feel comfortable, 55%. So they're at 56%. Okay. What do I think about that? I think that they definitely need to address some of the points costs on some of the units. But that said, we have got some hard counters coming out for Lumineth Realm Lords soon. But I still think the Techless Castle is problematic, it's difficult, and it's not just fun to play against. So I would like to see that get a nerf pretty heavily. Lumineth Realm Lords have got a variety of great tool sets in their army. They've got fast cav that are powerful. They've got great infantry. They've got great characters. They've got loads that they can move around between. And that's not including just the Helon Castle. Obviously, when you go for Stone Guard and you go for the Cow Mountain Men, that's also really effective as well. Okay. Beasts of Chaos. Now, Beasts of Chaos are in an interesting place because we're mid their new book. That only came out a couple of weeks ago. We've already seen Beasts of Chaos 5.0s and 4.1s. We're seeing, especially things like Ungol Raiders being very, very effective. And they're a direct counter to Lumineth Realm Lords and maybe even Tzeentch Castles, which is quite interesting. So Beasts of Chaos, I think, are in a really good spot as a 4.1, 5.0 army, in my personal opinion. Maybe the highest skill cap army in the game. Ogre Tribes at 52% feels very good. They're very, very effective right now. They're a good, solid army. They've just given them enough extra output in this version of the game. They don't play in any way different to how they played in the last version of the game. So they've just given them that little bit of extra output. And their monstrous action, especially for those Stonehorns, which seem to be very, very common in all of the armies, are doing really well. But other than that, we've seen Meat Fistless with Kragnos. We've seen Stonehorn Beast Riders as battle line, and then more Stonehorns. We've even seen a couple of big Glutton block armies do really well. But yeah, very, very good. Gloomspite Gitz, 52%. Absolute amazing news. Like, this is just brilliant, right? Now, we're going to have a quick look at Gloomspite Gitz in a minute in more detail, so I'll come back to that because I think that's a hot topic, and we'll discuss that in a moment. But 52% overall, 27 tournaments, 193 matches. We've got a bunch of 4-1s just to add from this weekend, but yeah. Sylvaneth, 52%, really good for Sylvaneth. That's really good. At one point, I thought that they might be languishing, but Sylvaneth up there as well. Then in the mid-bracket, Disciples of Tzeentch, 51%. Sons of Behemoth, which even people like me said were never going to do well, 51%. In this GHB, this isn't taking into account anything from the last GHB. This isn't any rolling stuff. This isn't anything to do with older GHB stuff. This is just this GHB stuff, right? And they're doing really well. Flesh Eater Courts, Maggotkin Nurgle, Kharadron Overlords, New Book doesn't count at the minute. Bone Splitters, Fire Slayers, Deepkin, Slaves to Darkness, OCR Bone Reapers, Old Blades of Khorne, Stormcast Eternal, Cities of Sigmar, Cruel Boys, Skaven, Nighthaunt, Daughters of Cain, He Knights of Slaanesh, all in what we call the safety bracket. Okay? So now some of you may not agree that some of them are particularly good, especially things like Cruel Boys. As you can see here, not necessarily loads of data on the Cruel Boys because they're not played a lot. 73 matches and 19 tournaments. But the people that do play them are the people who understand how they work at least and probably play them quite well. OCR Bone Reapers, 47% win rate, but we know for a fact that they've been getting a bunch of 4-1s. They're very good, especially into anti-squig, using that anti-squig tech. Slaves of Darkness, 49%. That's actually quite nice for an army that's the most played army. We're going to talk about that in a minute. There are definitely lists that can do a lot better. That just means it's got the widest skill expression available, so 49% is actually quite a healthy place for it to be. It means that if you take out the players who aren't necessarily great, that faction win rate skyrockets pretty aggressively, right? So it's something to be talking about. Nighthaunt lower down, 46%. I think that's fine. I think Nighthaunt are fairly monosyllabic. They're a combat army that necessarily doesn't fight as well as some of the other combat armies, but make some good 4-ups, make some good 5-up wards. They do fine. I think that works okay. Daughters of Cain actually being quite low is quite interesting, 46%. What's changed? I think just a bunch of the players who played those armies very, very well have moved on to other armies. Marathian the Bow Snakes, which is all I've seen, or Marathian the Fight Snakes and Incarnate, have been everywhere. They really need some other tools, maybe some ways of holding the primary a little bit better, other than doing a huge amount of damage. And ultimately, there's a bunch of other armies out there right now who can survive that damage or do first turn damage quicker to the Daughters of Cain than they can do to them. So that's something that's quite interesting. Although they have posted 4-1s and 5-0s, so I wouldn't be too disheartened by their 46% win rate. He Knights of Slaanesh just got a new book, so I don't think that's really worth talking about right now. In the lower bracket, Seraphon, Ironjaws, and Soulblight Gravelords. What's going on? Okay, well, with Ironjaws, not necessarily loads of data, but I guess someone has to be at the bottom. And Ironjaws have gone into a fighting meta that's maybe better at it than fighting. A lot of it really relies on the big Maw Crusher, and he's very susceptible to be shot off the board or even fought off the board. Very points expensive at the minute. And Seraphon is a great story. Seraphon is just a wonderful story right now. From absolute heroes to absolute zeros. 43% win rate, 68 matches, 19 tournaments. Are they bin right now? No, I don't think that's the case. I just think so many players who were playing Seraphon really, really well have moved on. They just don't want to play it again and still. And those points hikes have gradually kept adding on to the power of the nerfs. But there's a new book soon, so I'm sure that's going to skyrocket. Soulblight Gravelords, which is quite funny. Soulblight Gravelords are at the very bottom of this win percentage wise. When we just today talked about a Soulblight Gravelords 5-0, we talked about a Soulblight Gravelords 5-0 last week, and we talked about some Soulblight Gravelord 4-1 this week and last week. So while it does say it's at the bottom, they're not in the place where Hedonites were previously unplayable. At the right-hand side, it's pretty telling. The battle plan usage in tournaments. Jaws of Galette being very popular. There are 5 objectives on that one. Ours for the taking, Position of Power, Only Worthy, and the Prize of Galette, all being the most popular ones. Presence of Idol is really good. I like that as well. Nidus Path feels like one of those ones that's just a normal battle plan with something a little bit interesting. And then the battle plans that we rarely see. Realmstone Cache, Path of a Champion, Battle Lion Drawn, and then Twists and Turns. Only 1% of all tournament games are twists and turns, as predicted at the very top. when we reviewed the GHB, I was like, there's no way Twists and Turns is making it into events. It might only have been my events that we've done Twists and Turns. And if you are going to put Twists and Turns in, has to be round 5. Has to be. Right, meta representation. This is huge news. Huge news on meta representation. Slaves to Darkness, most popular faction in the game for this GHB. Massive news. Stormcast Eternals in second place. There's a percentage difference, and that really says to me that like people were just so excited about Slaves to Darkness for a very long time. There are so many different builds that work. Do you want to run Chosen? Do you want to run Nurgle Knights? Do you want to run Varangard, Archeon? Do you want to run Splintered Fang? Like, do you want to run... Like, there's so many... We haven't even seen Chariot lists make it to the table. I don't know if they're good enough to make it up to the 4150 bracket, but they definitely exist and are out there to play. So there's so many builds. Then Ogre More Tribes up there. Super easy to build, super easy to put together. Thank you to Captain Slowmo for donating 10 gift subs while I'm doing this. What a superstar. Thanks, buddy. Ogre More Tribes, just very easy to put together. They play very simply. They're probably the go-to army for like an easy way to play right now, which is great. Thanks to Rob Kelly for donating £10 to the show as well. Wow. Thanks, babe. Sylvaneth, third most popular faction. Sorry, fourth most popular faction, which is quite interesting because their win rate hasn't necessarily been so high. I put that down to just having an incredibly strong aesthetic that people like. Lubreth Realm Lords, a lot of people collecting in lockdown, and it's just very, very good. Gloomspite Gitz at 5.5% of the meta, and I assume is going to go even higher. Gloomspite Gitz are going to be a popular faction for a very long time now. You're going to see more Rocker armies. You're going to see more Gitz armies. Nighthaunt up there as well. And actually, let's take a moment to kind of look at that like top section. Nighthaunt, combat army. Gloomspite Gitz, mainly a combat army. They have some shooting. Luminous Realm Lords, definitely a shooting army. Sylvaneth, definitely a shooting army. Then Ogre More Tribes, combat army. Stormcast Eternals can be a shooting army, but generally a fighting army. And then Slaves to Darkness, definitely a fighting army. That meta representation being so high for Ogres, Slaves to Darkness and Ogres, you've got that 17% of the meta. You've got to say to yourself, I've got to fight something. And I definitely have to fight very combat Slaves to Darkness, very combat Ogres. And I think that's quite telling. Same with also Gloomspite Gitz. Thank you to Captain Slowlo for 10 gift subs. That's so great of you. Super cute. So there we go. So that's the meta rep. Battalions. Okay. Last season was dominated, absolutely dominated by the ability to add +1 damage with bounty hunters. Absolutely dominated. However, none of the battalions from this season give you +1 damage, which is an insane buff. So instead, it's unsurprising to see the one drop, the choice to go first, be the most popular battalion in use. So there it is, the Battle Regiment at 67%. However, Warlord is really popular, and then Galician Veterans is also very popular as well, as is Command Entourage. I would very much like to see Galician Veterans, which lets units fight basically in 2 ranks, go into core rules. I would like it to not be part of a battalion, although it's kind of fun design that it's part of a battalion, but I think having it as core rules would be very, very good in my personal opinion. And then we see Galician Command and the Galician Sharpshooters. So we have more of those the battalions, and we've seen quite a bit of representation of those battalions, but nowhere near as much, where Bounty Hunters was obviously more dominant than Battle Regiment previously was. So, as for grand strategies, 40% of all grand strategies taken are take what's theirs. Again, we could do a big deep dive in this, but it's all available for you to look at right there. So we're going to deep dive one of the factions today. But that's obviously going to be Gloomspite Gitz, because this is something a lot of the people are talking about. Are they too strong? Are they not strong enough? How does it all work? We know that there's probably a nerf incoming for them, which feels really bad, especially when we have Beast of Chaos doing particularly well as well. Okay, so what does their win rate look like? So since their book release, they have a 54% win rate. 54% win rate. The most popular subfaction, though, that's been chosen, 42% of the time, is Jaws of Mork. You can see it there. And that subfaction which seems to be the chosen one, has a 63% win rate. So that's definitely in what we would consider to be the danger category. So this is like bad for the health of the game, and something could be done about it. So as we can see, 148 matches played with Jaws of Mork, and they're sat on that 63%. Grimscuttle, hilariously, rarely taken 1% of the time. Also very good. I think that's a bit aberrant. There's only 5 matches played with that, so we don't have to really talk about that. King's Gitz, 48%, and Glog's Mega Mob, so Trolls, 50%. So, yeah. So, yeah, the Maws of Jork. Yeah, the Jaws of Hawk. So, I'm not really sure what to say about this other than it's very, very, very strong. And there is some little indicators of how it likes to play. I mean, we already know because we've read every list that's done it. But it's an alpha combat army. Let's look at this. It's got a battle regiment 76% of the time as a battalion. So, they're wanting to go first. And that's mainly because they want to get all those buffs up. 5 up ward save seems like an obvious one. Yeet at the enemy, and then just absolutely kill stuff. Warlord also really popular as well. But what's quite interesting about Jaws of Mork is that they don't do particularly well into the top of the meta. What do I mean by that? So this is a special shout out to Ziggy. So when we broke the stats up, 55% plus is the top of the meta. Between 45 and 55 is the middle of the meta. And the middle of the meta is incredibly healthy right now. And then the bottom of the meta is only 3 factions. How does the army do into them? Well, actually, they generally tend to lose into the top of the meta, which is things like Lumineth Realm Lords. However, they do great into the middle, and they do great into the bottom of the meta. And why they do so badly into Lumineth Realm Lords? Well, it's because Lumineth Realm Lords have got like a Bellicor spell that can shut the enemy down. In fact, they have 2 versions of that. And if you build a big Death Star of Squig Hoppers or Boincrop Bounders, or Squig Herd, then having it so that that unit can't move or do stuff is incredibly detrimental. And that's why Lumineth are doing so well. It's why Safe to Darkness players probably should be running a Bellicor in their army, because its ability to shut down the enemy is very effective. And that's effectively what we're seeing here. So we are seeing counterplay come from enemy armies, but it has to be those very specific ones. So that's Gloomspite Gitz. Are Gloomspite Gitz too good? The answer is maybe a little bit. But only specific builds, and even those specific builds have specific counters. So quite an interesting top-end meta, but something that people could discuss in great detail, in my opinion. Our first event, and definitely our biggest event, is the Vic GT 2023. 54 players competing in Victoria in Australia. Our winner is Mr. Joel Graham with a Gloomspite Gitz army. He was running Gloomspite Gitz and the Jaws of Mork. He had Grinkrak the Great, Scragrot, a Squig Boss with Nasher Squig, and he had Tunnel Master for that battle tactic we talk about all the time. Loon Boss with the Clammy Hand, the Arcane Tome, and Hand of Gork for a teleport. He's then got 10 Boingrot Bounders, and while they're only 280 points, they're actually what we would call a smash unit. They're a damage dealing unit. And they're pretty much in the brawler category. They've got a 4-up base save. They're only 280 points. They've got a 4-up rally. You can give them a 5-up ward. You can give them extra rend. They get extra attacks in Jaws of Mork. So lots going on there. 10 Boingrots will kill a lot of stuff. Then he's got 40 Moonclan shooters, which I think is actually pretty good. 250 points, very cheap. Don't forget they can control objectives from 9 inches away as opposed to 12. No, that's not true. Sorry, that's only the stabbers. That's not true. 40 Moonclan shooters can just shoot a lot of shots. And arguably, you can build a shooting army. You can do a shooting army in Gloomspite Gitz. We just haven't seen it yet because alpha combat armies are just so good, so powerful. Then he's got 12 Squig Herd, little cheap, nice unit. Again, can do some punch. 120 points makes you think it's a bit of a chaff line, but actually it can do quite a lot of damage. And then 30 Squig Hoppers are his big hammer unit. 540 points, do a load of damage. And then he's just got a load of buff pieces. 5 Gobblepalooza for extra rend and all the other stuff. They're also a screening unit because they start with a 4-up ward save, which is pretty nuts. You can also 4-up rally them. Then he's got the Sneaky Snufflers to do the big buffs, probably on Squig Hoppers. In my opinion, now this could be wrong, I think it's yeet in, buff up the Hoppers, yeet them in, delete a bunch, either rally them or return them on a 4+, because you can return half of the unit from the Loon Shrine on a 4+. Shoot with the shooters, charge with the Boingrots, do lots of damage. Everyone's all buffed up. Rallies all over the place. Very, very effective. Congratulations to Joel. And well done to the Gitz. Right. In the 4-1 bracket, we've got a bunch of legends. And in the spicy news, we've got 3 Caradron Overlords lists. Caradron Overlords lists that did well. But before we get into those, let's talk about Scott Wyatt and his Disciples of Tzeentch. He's got Guild of Summoners, which means for 9, 18, 27 fate points, he can summon a big Lord of Change. He's got Kairos Fateweaver, a Magister, a Fluxmaster, Herald on Disc of Tzeentch, and then he's got an Ogroid Thermitage. A unit of 10 Pink Horrors, 2 units of Carrick Acolytes, and a Kronspine Incarnate of Gur. He's got the Underspell Chronomantic Cogs for reroll cast for everyone, and the Burning Sigil of Tzeentch, which you can't stop on the first battle round. Drop it in the middle, do mortal wounds. So it's a summoning engine, but you get to tank with the Kronspine Incarnate. Shout out to Scott. And then you get to summon some Lords of Change, which is fun. Now, the 3 Caradron Overlords list. We've got James Hallam, Nathan Thompson, and Alexander Cron. All 3 different barracks and different lists. James Hallam, first, was running Barrack Zon. He had an Aether Chemist, an Aether Navigator, and an Admiral, as well as Drecky Flint and an Endrin Master with Endrin Harness. He had 2 units of 10 Arcanaut Company. He'd taken the Soulscreen Bridge for free. And then he'd taken some Skywardens and a unit of Iron Drakes. His Iron Drakes, he was going to teleport across, and then he had an Arcanaut Frigate. So his Iron Drakes are using the Soulscreen Bridge to teleport across the board, and then he's got 2 Gun Haulers. However, Nathan Thomas was using Barrack Nar. He had an Aether Chemist, Brock, Endrin Master, and Arcanaut Admiral, and then he had a unit of 9 Endrin Riggers, 2 units of 10 Arcanaut Company, and then he had a unit of 15 Thunderers, and they were inside a big Ironclad. And then finally, to kind of like round it off, Cron was using Barrack Mornar, and he had 2 Aether Chemists, an Aether Navigator, an Arcanaut Admiral, 2 Admirals, and then he had 15 Thunderers, and then an Arcanaut Company, and then an Ironclad. So he had 30 Thunderers and an Ironclad, and again, the Soulscreen Bridge for free. So 2 of the lists playing similarly, teleporting up a unit of shooters, either Ironclads or Thunderers. Iron Drakes or Thunderers, shooting out screens, and then charging everything else in and doing a bunch of damage. Then we had Kieran Coates, and they definitely need looking at in more detail, and we'll definitely do that on another show. Then we had Kieran Coates with Skaven. He had a Verminlord Warbringer, don't forget, Fight on Death. Thankwall, a Greyseer, and a Greyseer, then 3 lots of 20 Clan Rats, 5 Plague Sensor Bearers, 10 Plague Sensor Bearers, a Warp Grinder, to be able to deep strike with some of those units, and then a Hell Pit Abomination, Lacquer the Soul Seeker for transporting the boy forward, and that's that list. And then we had Jason Mushi. He was running Daughters of Cain and Calibron. He had Marathi. He had the Marathi, the Incarnate, and 15 Fighty Snakes. And then finally we had Campbell Rowe with Disciples of Tzeentch. He had Hos Arcanum. He had Curseling, Gaunt Summoner on Disc of Tzeentch, Kairos Fateweaver, a Magister, 2 lots of 10 Carricks, 3 lots of 10 Carricks, and then 2 units of 10 Pinks. So screening with the Pinks, shooting with the Carricks, summoning engine in Hos Arcanum is pretty good, being able to shut down any endless spells. And that's everything from Vic GT. Shout out to everyone in Australia. Hope you had a good time. Our next event is the Dasmore Wargaming Tournament. Had 29 players playing here at the Daventry Wargaming Club. For podcast listeners, I described to you what looks to be a garage, but a particularly nice one. Just going to say that. Okay, so the winner was James Lake. I played James before. He's a great player on the tabletop. Lovely fella. Soulblight Gravelords with Vrykross Dynasty. So Soulblight Gravelords doing another 5-0. 5-0 last week as well. So doing really well. Necromancer, Redekar the Beast. Necromancer's got the Command Trait Pack Alpha, Arcane Tome. He's got a Vampire Lord, and then he's got 3 lots of 40 Deadwalker Zombies. That's a lot of board presence. That's a lot of damage. That's a lot of wounds for you to just go through. Everything you kill, you potentially bring back a model into that unit as well. That's pretty good, especially with piling attack twice. Then he's got 20 Graveguard, which he's going to screen everything so those Graveguard can go in. And also, on another turn, piling attack twice with +1 attack from the Vampire Lord. Radikar is also going to buff everyone in that aura as well. And then you got the Zombie Dragon. Oh my god, the Zombie Dragon in there as well. So it is a 1-drop. So he does have the choice to go first, or your opponent going first. He gets reroll cast thanks to Vrykros Dynasty. And Zombie Dragon, I think, just going to be really good for doing monstrous actions. At least that, right? So yeah, like just a lot of wounds on the board and a lot of damage. That's the simple answer. The zombies are very, very good because they just ping a lot of mortal wounds. In my opinion, especially for 240 points, they're great. And then your Graveguard are incredible, as we've seen multiple times in Soulblight Gravelords. So yeah, good. Definitely depends on the mission as well, and the matchups on this army doing well. But this is our second Soulblight Gravelords list going 5-0 in 2 events at the moment. Okay, let's look at the 4-1s. We had Toby Thomas with Flesh Eater Courts with double Ghoul King on Terrorgeist, looking to double punch stuff in his list. Simon Rook was running Gloomspite Gitz. He had double max Squig Herd for the big damage. We had Seb Ducker with a Beasts of Chaos list, triple Great Bray Shaman, 30 Ungor Raiders in 3 lots of 10, 20 Bestigor, and then 2 lots of Ungor and a Cygor and a Chaos Gargant with some Bulgor. Not forgetting you can return D3 plus 3 models back to each one of these sub-factions. So each one of the like Ungor units at the end of each Battle Shock phase. Seems pretty good. I quite like that. Bastigor Smashing Face. We know they get those pluses to charge when they come in. Bulgor doing some big damage. Very fun list. Then we had that's it. Yeah, those are all the 4-1s. Those are all the 4-1s. Oh, we had Big War. I'm so sorry. We had a Big War list, and the Big War list is actually really funny. It had Godrak, an Uruk War Chanter, 2 of them, Gobsprak, an Uruk Mega Boss with Tunnel Master and the Griffeather Charm, and then a Wurgog Prophet, then 10 Uruk Brutes, 5 Uruk Brutes, and then 3 lots of 5 Arboys. So yeeting in Godrak, yeeting in the Mega Boss, using the Wurgog Prophet to Care Bear Stare, use its Mortal Wound Care ability on the enemy. Gobsprak, I honestly don't know, but I guess it just brings a wizard. You get to cast Mystic Shield on Godrak and make him a little bit more survivable, which honestly feels very sensible. And then a bunch of Ard Boys for holding objectives, and some Brutes for doing some mid-board damage. So great little event. I hope everyone had a good time. Let's carry on. Sanctuary War Games, Sanctuary War Games was a gathering of might, which consisted of 27 people battling it out to be the king of the might, or queen, or whatever. And it was won by Mr. David Jack. David Jack was running Lumith Realm Lords in the sub-faction Helon. He had the Archmage Teclis, a Scenari Cathalar, who was the general, with the Master of Magic and the Silver Wand. And then he had a Scenari Lawseeker. He had a unit of 10 Wardens, 5 Wind Chargers, 20 Sentinels, and then another 20 Sentinels, with the Umbral Spell Portal and the Rune of Petrification. If you'd like to know how to run this list, you can go onto the Honest Wargamer YouTube and look at the Lumineth Castle, and you can see how that plays. In the 4-1 bracket, we got Sean Ricketts, Phil McGuinness, Baz Norman Jr., Emir Mortimer Rice Roberts, and Andy Curry with a very spicy list. Nailed it. The different lists that they were all running. We had Daughters of Cain with Marathi, 15 Shooty Snakes, 10 Fighty Snakes. We had a Gloomspite Gitz list with Jaws and Mork. We had a load of Squig Hoppers and some Boingrot Bounders in that list. Andy with his Spicy Fireslayer list with Uruk Runefather, Rune Smiter, Rune Master, Battlesmith, and a Flamekeeper, and then that massive brick of 450 points Hearthguard Berserkers. And then the Molten Infernoth, obviously, for the easy Grand Strat. Another Gloomspite Git list, but this time, ladies and gentlemen, no goblins, apart from Scragrot. And then a Dankhold Trog Boss, 6 Rotguts, 6 Rotguts, 6 Rotguts, a unit of Spore Splatter Fanatics, a reinforced unit of Dankhold Troggoths, and the Malevolent Moon. And then finally, there was a Slave Starters list, and this is nuts. Knights of the Empty Throne, Chaos Sorcerer Lord, Chaos Sorcerer Lord, all with 2 with the Mark of Tzeentch and then 1 with the Mark of Slaanesh. A unit of Nurgle Chaos Knights with the eroding icon, and then 9 Varangard with the Mark of Khorne, and then 3 Varangard with the Mark of Nurgle, which is nuts. That's a lot of wounds put out there, so that's quite interesting. Feels like Be'lakor could get even better, as being pointed out in the chat, with all of these mega units of hoppers and all sorts of things. And no surprise that Lumineth doing well when they have 2 sources of spells that do what Be'lakor does from their army, but it does it over multiple turns. So shutting down Death Stars feels like a real bonus at the moment. Maybe why we see Slaanesh do well with their character that makes it so that you can only attack him. Shutting down some of those alpha combat or strong combat units. But really awesome. Our next event takes us over to Dublin. Underworld Wargaming game centre, you can go find there. Great little place. We have 4 4-1s. We have Christopher Nellis, Stephen Mitchell, Robert Kelly from the chat, and King Solomon. King Solomon actually won the event, but the placing's a little bit wrong on BCP. So if we look through the list a little bit, Stephen Mitchell was running the LRL Castle, which we already talked about earlier. Then we had Ogun Moor Tribes also going 4-1. Bloodpelt Hunter with Tunnel Master. Feels very obvious, especially with such a good shooting attack. Huskard on Thundertusk. Slaughtermaster and a Frostlord on Stonehorn with flaming weapons and Rotmane Eldar. Feels like that's the loadout. 3 lots of Stonehorn Beast Riders and then a Battle Regiment. In a Battle Regiment, sorry. Our Gloomspite Gitz list, self-nerfed, as Robert said in the chat. Jaws of Mork. We had a Loon Boss on Mangler Squigs, which we rarely see. Scragrot, a Squig Boss with Nash's Squig. 2 lots of 10 Boingrot Bounders. A unit of 36 Squig Herd and the Gobberpalooza. But no Sneaky Snufflers in this list either. So that's quite interesting. And then a cheeky Mangler Squigs as well. So you got a monster character and then a monster on foot. We rarely seen the Mangler Squigs kind of see play. Sorry, a non-ridden Mangler Squigs. And then finally, we've got Nighthaunt, Scarlet Doom. We've got Guardian Souls, a Cruel Gas Cruciator, Spirit Torment, 30 Bladegeist Revenants. This is all in Scarlet Doom. And then, so they're going to be doing mortal wounds when they charge in. And then 4 units of 5 Hex Wraiths, and then some Spirit Hosts and Chain Ghasts. So those Hex Wraiths are going to be doing what we call an alpha pin army, an alpha blocking army. They run up in front of the army, the enemy army, a line of 5 cavalry bases, pin the opponent back, 2 units. You try to get out of the deployment, those Hex Wraiths are in the way. You can do it with a second wave of Hex Wraiths if you really want to. The whole time, the Bladegeist Revenants are threatening you at the top of the board. Or if you move into the mid-board, maybe the Bladegeist Revenants just charge in with the Hex Wraiths to apply, because there's multiple small units of them, to apply a bunch of debuffs, lift big units up. Seems very, very effective. So that's everything over at this event. You should go check them out. It's really, the Irish community is a fantastic community to go play with. If you get a chance to do it, you should do. We also went into Sweden. We had an event in Sweden. We didn't go to Sweden, sadly. We had an event in Sweden called the Stockholm Slaughter 9. It was won by Albin Glauman, who was running a Fire Slayers list. The Lodge Vorstrag. He had an Auric Rune Father, a Rune Master, and then a Battlesmith and a Rune Smiter. But the key part here is the double Flamekeeper. And if you go back and watch a couple of weeks ago, we talked about this list in detail. There's also an interview you can go check out on Patreon with Alex Bruce, who talks about this list in detail and about how to run it. I think actually it's already available to watch for free. It's got 15 Hearthguard Berserkers. It's got 30 Volkite Berserkers and 2 lots of 10 Volkite Berserkers. So what it does is the Volkite Berserkers die. They tap up the Flamekeeper. They top up their little pools that they have of slain models in range, and then you can apply things like charging the enemy, charge phase, extra damage. They also have Fight on Death, which is also really powerful, and they then have a 4-up ward save. Not ward save, 4-up rally, thanks to the Battlesmith. And then the 15 Hearthguard Berserkers just absolutely slap people in to death, which is very good. Very good. Okay, in the 4-1 bracket, we had Robert Carlson, Nils Wilberg in the 4-1 bracket. Rob Carlson was running a Slaves to Darkness list in Cabalist, so his wizards are much better wizards. Better than Tzeentch wizards, not salty. Chaos Sorcerer Lord, Exalted Hero of Chaos, and a Slaves to Darkness Demon Prince with the Mark of Nurgle. He had the Helm of the Oppressor as well, which is quite cool in that list. Double Corvus Cabal, 10 Chaos Knights with the Mark of Nurgle. Again, the Eroding Banner. Just seems to be just so common, these 10 Chaos Knights, for pinning the opponent in, making a very difficult Tarpit unit that's really challenging to get rid of. Then 10 Chaos Chosen, 480 points on the Mark of Sinesh. The Soul Screen Bridge is in this list as well, so I'm assuming we're trying to get these... we're going to teleport these guys over, and then they're going to charge better from the Chaos Chosen. And then we've got the Ugroid Therodons. Now, this is actually something I wasn't expecting. A unit of 6 Therodons with the Mark of Nurgle, which you don't see a lot. Nurgle Therodons can really fight, but they're quite fragile. But instead of leaning into them being outputty, he's gone for making them a little bit more survivable, which I think is quite interesting. So there we go. Thanks everyone thanks everyone to that event. Our final 2 events were on the smaller side, but I'm definitely going to mention them. Drop Zone Games Central Island Open Age of Sigmar event was won by Tyler Gugin. Congratulations to him. And then the War Dolly Weekend was won by Lachlan Hall. So that wraps up all of our events this weekend. Not actually that busy on a weekend. Right, that's it. That's the wrap-up. Events done, stats done. Go check out the stats yourselves. Super worth doing. I would encourage you to do so. Definitely worth. Like, what else has been happening this week? No events in the US. That's super weird. We've got Adepticon coming up as a big US event sometime soon. The meta is wild at the minute. I think that's kind of the interesting element. I think if Soulblight Gravelords and OCR Bone Reapers end up coming out in the next month or so, we are going to be in a crazy meta place where there's so much back and forth with all these different armies, so much rock, paper, scissors, so much swap up in meta representation that the game is going to be incredibly fun to play at events. Because effectively, the best way to learn, go take your army to an event and you'll play probably a whole bunch of new books, a whole bunch of new armies, and a whole new bunch of ways to play. I quite like that. I think summer could be quite interesting as well, because obviously we'll get a new GHB. That'll change the game up again. And then hopefully some new battle tomes towards the end of the year. And we've had a pretty great year for Age of Sigmar. So all told, the game's in a really healthy place. The metas are in a good place right now as well. We don't have any runaway factions that are crazy. And then any armies that are doing really badly are getting new books, with the exception of maybe something like Ironjaws. So that's worth looking at. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to the Twitch chat for hanging out with me all day and putting their 10 cents in on what they think. We do this every Monday, so you come to hang out with us while we do it. Thanks to Ziggy and Rob again for producing such fantastic stats. They're superstars and I really love them. And that's it. I don't know what else to say. Just come hang out, watch my YouTube videos, any of those other things. That'd be really great. And I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, leave some comments, like, subscribe, and all that stuff. Thanks for tuning in.